It was still dark in the South China Sea when the radar alarm whispered, a dark hull, zeroing in fast, cutting across the bow of the U.S. destroyer. A single ship in disputed waters. And suddenly, two great powers tested each other to the edge of accident. This is the story of a showdown that nearly changed everything. The South China Sea is more than a maritime traffic lane. It is the crossroads of trade, resources, and power politics. More than $3 trillion in trade passes through these waters each year. China claims nearly the entire sea via its 9-dash line, a claim rejected by a 2016 tribunal as incompatible with international law. Yet China has built out reefs, militarized islands, deployed Coast Guard and naval vessels to enforce its claims. Meanwhile, the United States, though not a claimant, has repeatedly sent its warships through these contested waters, asserting freedom of navigation and challenging any denial of access. These so-called FONOPs are not about territory alone. They are about principle, credibility, and deterrence. Against this backdrop, the stage was set. A U.S. destroyer on patrol, a Chinese warship tasked with enforcing sovereignty, and somewhere between diplomacy and confrontation, a wild card. The sea itself. The U.S. carrier strike-guided missile destroyer, let's call her the Destroyer, steamed at high speed toward the contested shoal. She crept to within 12 nautical miles of the Chinese-held reef, a classic FONOP route. But this time, the Chinese Navy was ready. A Type 054A, or equivalent frigate, high-speed, modern, with advanced missiles aboard, had been tracking her approach. As the destroyer passed through the narrowing corridor of sea, the Chinese frigate slipped into her radar shadow visual cue. Map showing reef chains, overlay of patrol route. The frigate closed position, maintaining radar lock and radio silence. At one point, its wake began converging ahead of the destroyer's bow. Behind the scenes on the destroyer bridge, the captain locked eyes on the incoming contact. The rules of the sea allowed passage, but the behavior unfolding was anything but routine. An electronic message crackled across bridge radio. "You are in my waters. Depart immediately." The destroyer's crew paused. The sea chatter hushed. The Chinese frigate angled ahead, reducing speed. In naval parlance, this is a cut-across maneuver, blocking the target's path before it clears the shoal zone. Suddenly, the destroyer's radar tracked a second contact, a Chinese Coast Guard cutter deploying water cannon aimlessly near the stern of the destroyer. The rules of engagement had escalated visual cue. Archival footage of water cannon from Chinese cutters, frigates in close-in maneuvers. On board the destroyer, alarms rang. Bridge, helm, CIC, Combat Information Center, all locked in. The captain ordered full astern and hard starboard, maneuvering for clearance. The frigate responded by accelerating to close distance. Within minutes, the range shrank to less than 100 yards. The tension ratcheted. As the destroyer attempted to transit the corridor, the Chinese frigate executed a textbook blocking formation. Ahead of the path, angled to port, bow toward the destroyer's starboard side. The destroyer's wake curved dangerously. Smoke rising, water slapping the turrets. At one point, the destroyer's captain radioed, "We're taking avoidance action." The bridge reported obstacles. 2 retail merchant ships caught in the wakewash, a small fishing boat weaving nearby. All around, the sea itself conspired to complicate the maneuver. When the destroyer reached the shoal's edge, the frigate began to withdraw, but not before the destroyer's radar locked the frigate's missile launchers, and the Chinese ship's long-range radar glowed in twilight. For all the diplomacy, a military instrument of power was on display. Visual cue, diagrams of ship positions, radar blips, bow-on blocking maneuvers. In the final act, the distance dropped to under 50 yards. One wrong turn, one misread wave, could trigger contact. from the destroyer's CIC. 20 seconds to collision bearing, evasive action executed. The captain ordered flank speed to clear the zone. The frigate angled away, its wake churning. No shots were fired, but the implication was clear. One mistake, and the region's discomfort would turn into catastrophe. Back in Washington and Beijing, messages were sent. The Chinese Southern Theater Command accused the U.S. destroyer of violating Chinese sovereignty. The U.S. 7th Fleet declared the passage consistent with international law and said it would not be deterred. The world watched in silence. Why did this matter? Because the South China Sea is not remote. It connects Asia's factories to the world, carries energy to global markets, and hosts submarine cables, merchant shipping, and strategic choke points. The Chinese attempt to assert control through a frigate versus destroyer duel was a test of resolve, by China to show it can dominate its claimed waters, by the U.S. to show it will not accept exclusion. Every ship so sails sets precedent. A blocked passage now could become many tomorrow. Safe passage once might become restricted. In the deep blue waters of sovereignty, each maneuver is a statement. In the days that followed, both navies issued formal protests. Beijing pledged to maintain high alert in the area. Washington reiterated freedom of navigation would continue. The incident did not erupt into combat, but the message was loud and clear. Regionally, U.S. allies and partners watched closely. The Philippines, Japan, Australia asked whether the U.S. would defend access in the event of larger conflict. China's neighbors weighed whether to challenge Beijing's claims or align for protection. The credibility of naval presence became a piece of national strategy. Technologically, the encounter demonstrated the value of ship handling, integrated sensors, rules of engagement, de-escalation procedures. A near collision is a failure of command and control, but it also reveals how thin the margin is between diplomacy and disaster. As the destroyer slipped out of the contested corridor and the Chinese frigate faded behind the reef's horizon, the seas returned to their indifferent calm. But beneath that surface lay a deeper truth. Where rights meet ships, strategy meets waves, and major power politics meets sailors at sea. This was not a battle of missiles. It was a confrontation of wills. In the South China Sea, you don't always need a war to make your point. Sometimes you just need a warship, a maneuver, and the world watching. And as long as those waters remain contested, there will be many more such moments, potential crises masquerading as routine patrols. The question is not whether they will happen, but when. Because in the end, the sea doesn't care who holds the passage, but the powers that sail through it certainly do. And for those who watch from above, the lesson is enduring. Power doesn't always roar. It sometimes sails quietly by, crossing your bow.